The Catwalk podcast showcases the greatest of the people of the Permian Basin through partnering and conversation with high-level leaders, social entrepreneurs, nonprofit leadership, and industry executives.
Welcome to another episode of The Catwalk. I am Chris, the producer. I bet you're wondering why it's a little different. Where's the old guy? Well, I got some emails in asking for the handsome, funny person to be on the show more often. So I let Jay go. He's no longer with us. No, I'm just joking. But what we're doing today is going to spend some time asking Jay some questions. He's the one who's done all the question asking. We want to dive a little deeper into who he is and what brings this motivation to the catwalk that he has. So with me today is Jay Whitlow. Jay, how's it going?
It was great until you dropped the whole old guy thing.
Well, you are 67.
No, that'd be 57, and I need you to provide me all of the emails that you're talking about.
Well, unfortunately, I can't because there's some confidentiality that they requested. They were like, we can't let him know.
What?
Well, so I promised your wife I wouldn't name any names. Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah, you already named her. Yeah, I already got lit up this last week on the old man and the shoe, trendy shoe conversation that we had.
I never said old man. I said dad.
I know, but it's because I am a little bit older, and I need to, do better at pulling off my younger, energetic persona. But I hear what you're saying about the emails. It probably has something to do with client-producer privilege.
Yes, it's a legal thing. You wouldn't understand
I
it.
wouldn't understand that. How was your weekend?
It was good. I spent a lot of time just lazy watching movies this weekend.
Yeah? What'd you
so-
watch?
I watched the first two Mighty Ducks movies.
Yes.
Well, and so I wanted to bring this to the table.
Yeah.
I'm watching the second Mighty Ducks movie. Now, some information leading into the second Mighty Ducks movie is the team itself, the Mighty Ducks,
Right.
Statistically, are absolute garbage.
Right.
Beginning to end, they're garbage.
Yeah.
It's like you look at Goldberg. In the very first game in the movie,
Right.
he let 17 goals.
17?
17 in the first game.
That's trash.
And they only won 4 games to win the entire thing.
The Pee Wee League, yeah.
Pee Wee League, all right?
Yeah.
D5, District 5, the Ducks.
Right.
So Adam Banks was the only reason they were any good.
Right.
So,
Banks was good player.
yeah, now it brings us to the second movie.
Yeah.
And this is what frustrated me. You've got a team that had a handful of ducks left over from the last season.
Right. Pee Wee
They're playing
season.
in the
Yeah.
Goodwill Games, which is like the
Right.
kids' Olympics.
Right.
Really. So you got a handful of ducks, OG ducks left over.
Right.
And then Bombay brings in he recruits some more people.
Right.
Right. And so.
And
I'm
kills
looking
it.
Right. Yeah, well, he brought in some quality,
Yeah, he did.
but then he didn't utilize them. If you're a coach.
That's true. That's
You're
true.
a coach.
Good point.
And you bring in this team, and you're like, okay, I've got these 5 all-stars I'm bringing in, or these 5 new kids that I'm bringing in that they're going to help us win. Use them. But he also made poor choices. So I'm going to rattle off a couple of these people that he brought in and really point out the flaw in this situation. Now, don't get me wrong. I still enjoyed the movies.
Oh, of course.
But as a hockey fan, I question Bombay's motives.
Well, you told me you were going to watch Mighty Ducks this past weekend, so I was empty nesting it at home. I had everybody gone, and so I did a fly through, not watching the games intently or the movies intently, but I did watch, and I actually brought my top 10 Duck players in order. So I think we can have this little short conversation because mine are going to be a little controversial. You remember back in the day when we started the Catwalk, I had my top 5 lists and stuff like that, and people used to butcher me on Chick-fil-A sauces and stuff like that. You'll probably butcher me on my roster here, but I have some good reasons why I chose these players. And I'll just tell you, Goldberg's not in the top 10.
Well, he can't be. He was a horrible
trash.
goalie. He's a great character.
Oh, great
Horrible goalie. Horrible.
Yes. So what you got over there?
Okay, so I want to run through this real fast. So you got this top 5. We're going least to best, okay?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Dwayne Robertson, he's brought in the Goodwill games.
Yeah.
He's a showboater,
Yeah.
right? Plays with the puck too much to the point to where he loses goals because they steal the puck from him,
Sure.
right?
Typical.
And I think in the final game, he brings a lasso on the
Is
ice.
that against Iceland?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He brings a lasso on, and he only gets a 2-minute penalty for that.
Right.
Like, come on, you'd have been kicked out of the game.
Gretzky does that. He's out of the game.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, then you got Luis Mendoza.
Okay.
Luis
Yeah.
Mendoza, super fast,
Yeah.
but he can't stop.
No breaks.
Right, he's super speed, like this superhuman kid,
Right.
but he can't stop. So wouldn't it have been smarter from Bombay to get somebody a little bit slower
Who could stop? Yeah. You would think.
So that's poor coaching decision.
Yeah. So far.
And then you've got Dean Patterson, the second member of the Bash Brothers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You can't have them without, Bash Brothers can't exist without him,
True.
right? And he does this kind of rally. Like, he's a decent player, nothing to kind of like ooh and ah about, but he helps rally them at the end.
Yeah. He's
Right? So
he's like a third liner in the NHL.
He's totally in the middle.
Yeah.
Totally in
Yeah.
the middle.
Yeah.
And then you've got Julie the Cat Gaffrey,
Yes.
who is a 3-time Maine State goalie.
Solid.
Right. Phenomenal player on paper. But we don't know that because we never see her play.
Right.
Right. Why does he keep telling Goldberg, you got a hot glove, we're going to keep you in? But when you look at the stats, he lets 4 or 5 goals a game by.
Goldberg didn't have really a hot glove. More or less, he had a hot pocket.
Yeah. Well, to give you that. But she doesn't get any game time
Right.
until the final shootout.
Right. Yeah.
And then he tells her, you got the hot glove.
You're in. Yeah.
Like,
you're
come
in.
on. Right? Like, why would you bring somebody in who is
At the very end of the tournament.
why would you bring her on the roster if she's a multi-time state champion goalie
Safety net.
and then sit her?
Maybe it's a safety net.
Well, I'm sure if you had a goalie equal to or better than her.
Yeah. Yeah. All you had is Goldberg.
But
Yeah.
you don't. That's all you got is
don't.
Goldberg.
You don't.
So, and then Kenny Wu. Let's talk about
yes.
Kenny Wu.
Oh, yes.
Kenny Wu, one of the best players on that team.
Yep.
Stud. Best player on the team. Stick work. His skate work, his stick work is great. Top tier. Like, former figure
Elite.
skater.
Yeah.
Right? Could go all the way. And the only reason why he's number 1 on my list as best pick
Yeah.
versus Julie is because on paper Julie looked good, but we have nothing to compare it to.
Right. No stats.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's just a little rant that it
Well,
frustrated me.
let me throw you a curve.
Okay.
All right. For you Mighty Duck fans out there who know that I have a son who played hockey, part owner in a junior hockey team, I'm invested. So I have a little bit of knowledge of hockey. So I scored it just a little bit different, Chris. I'm going to go 10 up, but I'm going to talk about the top 2 or 3, okay, for the sake of time. So number 10, this is my top 10 Mighty Duck players, is the Cat Gaffney, right? So number 10.
You got her as
I
10?
got her 10. Number 9 is Tyler. That's the great Keenan Thompson of
Right.
SNL, right? Great dude. Number 8 is Averman. or Overman, however you say it.
Haverman.
Averman, great player. 7, Hall. 6 is Portman. Now, top 5.
Okay.
You ready? Top 5. Moreau,
Okay.
underrated player, fierce, uniquely flexible, manning the blue line. He's the purest playmaker on the team. Agree?
Purist.
Number 4.
Okay, I'll let you keep going, but I would argue purist.
Yeah, you can argue at the end. 4, Charlie Conway.
Okay.
Charlie Conway, he's the face of the Mighty Ducks.
He's the heart of
He's
the
the heart. He's clutch. He nets the game winner in the Pee Wee final. Remember, he sets up Goldberg in, was it D3?
Yeah.
The third one? Okay. Number 3, Fulton Reed. Slap shot can cause a plexiglass to shatter like no one else.
Right.
He hits it harder than an NHLer. Number 2, Guy Germain. Two-way force with skilled hands, elite vision, and a knack for finding the puck. Now, if you remember, on screen, the Mighty Ducks scored 38 goals on
Right.
screen. They scored more than that, obviously, throughout their season, but we only saw 38 goals on screen, and Guy had over half of those in assists. Number 1 player is Adam Banks.
Yeah.
If I'm starting a team, Adam Banks is on my roster. He's the rich kid villain.
He
I
is.
love him.
But he didn't even get really a villain arc, right? Like in the first movie, Bombay was the villain in his story,
Right.
right? Bombay took him away from all his friends, but later learned that loving the game for what the game is and not just for winning
Right.
is more important.
He is, I would say, he's the kid that invented the exclusive polo branded wearing shirt,
Yeah.
right? That's
Right.
all you ever saw him in. And just a really good athlete, good player.
For sure.
Yeah.
So here in a little bit, we're going to come back. We'll take a quick break, and then we're going to ask Jay some questions. We want to dive in and figure out who Jay Whitlow really is. So I apologize to all of you who have to sit through this. But we'll be back in just a moment.
Elevate your operation with Performance Chemical Company, the pioneers in redefining chemical solutions for the oil and gas industry in the Permian Basin. Unveiling groundbreaking ideas since 2017, our dry chemistry plant stands as a testament to innovation. Our products and services revolutionize water treatment, production, midstream, and saltwater disposals. We're your strategic partners in optimizing investments, slashing operating expenses. Performance Chemical Company. How you get there matters.
Welcome back, everyone. Today on the Catwalk, we're going to take a dive into who Jay Whitlow is. And so we're just going to get right into it. Jay, tell me a little bit about you, where you come from, and how you got here in Midland.
Great question. Well, if I'm 67 years old, as you say, that's a long time ago, but I'm not. I'm 57. I'm an only child. I'm from Mesquite, Texas, outside of Dallas. Only child. I went to Texas Tech University. I've shared before where I've met my wife and how I met her. If you don't know how I met her, check back early in the Catwalk. I share that story.
He beat her up, just so you know.
I broke 2 of her ribs. Swept her off her feet, basically. We've been married for 33 years this past January. I remember that because Jesus laid down his life at 33, and I can remember the number 33 really easily. We have 3 adult children, and we moved here in 2007, and moving here was Odessa. I had spent since college, since my days at Tech, until we moved here, primarily in church ministry and higher education, a faculty member in the Dallas area. And as you know, Chris, in the church ministry paid world, you don't make a whole lot of money.
No, you don't say.
Yeah. And I spent a greater portion of my 20s and 30s all in ministry. And my father-in-law and brother-in-law wanted me to move out here to be closer to the family. You know, Dave Ramsey says, don't work for your family. Now, there's a lot of things that Dave Ramsey says that I agree with. There's a lot of things that he says I don't agree with. One of those that I do agree with is don't work for your family. Love my family, but it is probably better to not do that. But we moved out here. My family had a oil and gas business where we made pump expendables for fluid ends. I knew nothing about that. In fact, I told them when hell freezes over, I would move out here to Odessa. And that year, there was a cold spell, a lot of ice in the state. And so I was like, okay, so hell's froze over, so we'll move. So 2007, we jumped in our mom van and sold the house and packed everybody up and moved out here and learned a business that I had no idea what it was about. But God used it as a great time to bless my family financially. Was able to get out of debt, was able to pay off house, was able to do a lot of things that I was not able to do in paid church ministry. I learned the business. It opened up a door for me to launch a nonprofit out of Africa, which I would love to talk about a little bit later. We launched that project, and in the midst of doing ministry, I found my second tour of duty going through another local church here in Midland, and loved serving the community, met a lot of great people in nonprofits. I served on several boards, and then just recently finding a new vision for my life. My kids are adult, as I said, and I am looking toward being an empty nester. And so it was time to make a change, and I wanted to get back into ministry, but not paid church staff ministry. And so I'm finding that voice doing public relation work, community engagement work for a great friend of mine that was part of this podcast that you know very well, Mike Myers at Performance Chemical.
So you've been in ministry. Cumulative, how long have you been in ministry?
Well, that's a great question because there's a misnomer about ministry. I believe biblically that we are all, if we're followers of Christ, we're all ministers. We're all disciples of Christ. We're sharing with people. We're loving on people. We're supporting people, serving people. But there's also the paid church staff position, right? And so that's a struggle of really, God called me way back when I was in college. Actually, in high school, my youth pastor was Rick, a guy named Rick, and Rick had a huge impact on my life, and I felt God calling me. A lot of people don't understand what calling means. He didn't pick up the phone and call me, obviously, but I felt God leading me, calling me into full-time church ministry work, to be doing ministry paid for by the church. And I felt that call while I was in college at Tech. And Chris, I have some really mile marker moments in my life where God affirmed that calling for me. And the first one was August the 16th, 1990. I was serving as a intern, paid intern for my former youth pastor, Rick, at a very large church in the Woodlands area. And one of my roles was to lead the team on mission trip, and we were down in Brownsville, Texas, down kind of on the border. And I'm a 21-year-old high school or a college graduate, and just kind of trying to learn the ropes of what paid church staff ministry. Again, there's a difference between ministry and paid church staff ministry. I'm trying to learn the ropes because, I want to go to seminary, and that's what I was told growing up, that to do ministry, you got to go to seminary and you got to work your way up the ladder of ministerial, pastoral roles, which is not true. But on August the 16th, 1990, we're on a mission trip, and we had probably 30, 35 youth with us. And my youth pastor was in charge. I was second in command. A guy named Charles was with us, good friend of mine. But on that trip, on that day, on August the 16th, a girl by the name of Melinda, who was a high school student, stopped breathing. We were rehearsing some skits. Back in the 90s, 80s, skits were really important to sharing the gospel for children. We were practicing, and she just stopped breathing. So Rick said, we got to call 911, and we were at this campground in the middle of nowhere. I mean, nobody really knew where we were. This was before cell phones, before geo-tracking, GPS locators. So we called and got the ambulance to come out to take her, to take Melinda to the hospital. And I had to run, Chris. I had to haul ass all the way across this field, longer than a football field. Charles was with me, tall grass, all the way to the front gate. I mean, we weren't going to go up the little road and the hills and the nice paved area. We were making that straight beeline to the front gate because we wanted to meet the ambulance there. So we ran as fast as we could. I've never run that fast in my life. Met the ambulance. The ambulance took the little road back, and we hauled back through the field. And when we got back, she had passed. That moment was when I really, truly understood what God's call for ministry, whether it was paid church staff or whether it was just what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be known as that kind of person. We flew home that evening with the entire youth group on the flight. It was Southwest Airlines. Melinda was in a casket thing underneath us. Her sister was on that flight, Chris. That's the first time I've ever flown on a flight where there's nobody told us about how to buckle up and how to mask would fall down or anything like that. And I remember sitting once we got back and watching her parents greet us off the flight. And that's when God hit me, as only He can, and said, this is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to be known for, is a person who serves me no matter where it is. I mean, I want to be so involved with what God is asking me to do that if today was my last day on earth, I'm serving Him. So to answer your question, that's the first thing about ministry that I really threw myself into. And then for the next 12, 15 years, I served on various church staffs, led as camp director at several camps. I spoke at a lot of different churches and really threw myself into that. It was when we were at a church in Richardson, Texas. I was writing curriculum, teaching, I was doing some educational work for the community college there in the Plano area. I was on faculty there. And we were given an opportunity to serve with a young marrieds class. And in that young marrieds class, there's a bunch of punk guys like I was at 21, 22, 23 years old. And God again began to speak to me and call me to reach out to those guys. I didn't have the greatest marriage. We had gone through a lot of stuff with infertility and wanting to have children, and where it almost ended our marriage. What could I possibly offer someone? So I got 7 guys in this class together, and we just met every Monday night and just hung out, had burgers, just talked about God stuff, about marriage and about being a man. And that grew to maybe 50 or 60 guys. And I still, to this day, still hear from some of those guys. In fact, one of our partners at Performance Chemical is one of those guys out of San Antonio. Matt, he's been on the show before, and those guys will randomly call me up, and they've got kids now. Some of them got grandkids now. They're at a different stage of life, but they still remember that moment when I reached out and said, I want to invest some time into you. So it's moments like that I can't put time around. I can't put a date on it. Those are just some things that God really began to move in my life to solidify ministry.
For sure. And this isn't like trying to make light of the situation. It's just astounding how things play out when you look back at it, right? And I'm not making this about me, but just trying to relate real fast.
Sure.
In college, I had a significant other take her life. And at that moment, it was just a punch in the gut. Looking back now, it was a domino that started another series of things that changed the way that I approach things in life. So it's just, it's amazing that something that tragic can lead to 15, 20 years of service.
Yeah.
And speaking of service, you'd mentioned a service project in Africa. What is that? What are you doing out there? What have you done out there?
Yeah, great question. You know, in the midst of the ministry part and the education and teaching and working at churches was that call from my father-in-law, like I said, that, hey, it's time for you maybe to do something different. And it wasn't out of disrespect to ministry at all. It was just, is it time to do something different? And I fought that. You know, I'm a people person. I'm a serving person. My leadership style is a servant leader. And to leave ministry behind, and again, paid church staff ministry, to go and do something in the oil field, Chris, I fought that. You know, I'm like, wait, I'm a paid church staff servant, right? I'm not a ministry guy that doesn't have a church attached to it.
Right.
So I'm coming out to the family business going, God, is this really what you called me to do? Right? I mean, is this, looking back over those two moments that I mentioned, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? But that's when he taught me ministry is not based on what church pays you or what's on your business card that says First Baptist or whatever church. Ministry is ministry. So I'm in oil and gas, and one of the things that my brother-in-law told me, he was like, hey, you get us to a certain spot financially, you get us to a certain spot with the company, we'll let you, it's kind of the trade-off. If you'll come here and help us grow the family business, we'll let you do some other things that are more in your skill set. So I'm learning round bar, I'm learning fluid ends, I'm learning valves and seats in the oil and gas industry and what we do and how we make those. And then one day I'm just searching and I'm looking on the internet at some water projects in Africa. I don't know why I was looking at those, but just something told me, why don't you go watch some of these videos and research what's happening in Africa. So I watched a video by a group called Integrative Community Development International. They were out of Warsaw, Indiana, and they were working with an organization called Charity Water in New York. And I watched this, and this drill rig was, you know, drilling for water, and we're here in Midland, Odessa, creating avenues and product and solutions for people who are drilling for gas and oil. And so I'm like, could these be tied together? Could there be a connection between drilling for water and drilling for oil and gas? So I called up this organization in Warsaw and I said, hey, we're a little, family business and we do some things. We've made some of the product that I see sitting on the back of that drill rig. Is there anything that we can do to help you guys? So as you said, looking back, it's amazing how God was preparing me for my new section of ministry, even though I was here in the oil and gas industry. So I got on a plane and I flew up to Warsaw and I asked them and looked over their fleet and their lines and how they were drilling and what they were doing to drill. And the guy that owns it, his name was Jim, fabulous dude. He goes, hey, man, we got a trip in May to Africa. Why don't you come see what we're doing? Now, you're talking to a guy who hates eating spicy food. So I'm going to go to Africa and eat food in Africa? Really? So I packed up 127 little packages of Ritz crackers, which is what I ate the entire time I was there. Okay? You laugh at it. It's true. I got all my shots. I got more shots than I've ever gotten in my life. In fact, the guy that gave me my 12th shot to go over there, he goes, you could lick a toilet now and you wouldn't get sick. I was clean of everything. Got on a plane, didn't know a single soul that was traveling with me. Flew to Paris, into Bangui, Central African Republic. And when I got off the plane, Chris, it was, again, another one of those moments like Melinda's death and the group of guys that I served with. It was another moment when God was like, look at what I've laid in front of you. We went to village in the Central African Republic, and there were all these drill rigs, all these hand water pumps broken. Because the sexy thing to do is to give people access to clean water, right? Let's drill a well. Let's put a hand pump on it. Yay us in America. We've solved your water crisis.
Right, and then you just walk away.
And then you just walk away. Americans are great at that. Let's just do all this stuff, right? Let's give everybody in Africa what they need, and then we're done. And so I asked the guy that was with us, I said, why are these pumps not working? We're over here drilling for new wells, and these pumps over here. And he said, well, there's about 60 to 70% of all the wells that are drilled in Africa end up broken with no sustainable model in which to come back and fix them or repair them. Chris, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I got back on the plane after my little trip, and I came back over to my family business, and I said, I'm not doing this again. What I'm going to do moving forward, God is calling me to help people in Africa learn how to fix the wells that they already have. There was one, I get really fired up about this. There was one pump, an 8-cent washer had worn off. There's no Home Depot over there. There's no Lowe's over there. Well, what do? The handle falls off because an 8-cent washer wears out. They go back to the dirty river. That's unacceptable. But yet here we are in America funding all these organizations to go drill water with no model in which to fix that. So I came back and told my family, I'm not doing family business anymore. I'm not doing oil and gas. I want to go and help people in Africa find a way to keep the water flowing. So I worked with a couple of organizations, some in Texas, some in the one in Warsaw, and we came up with models on how to help people take care of their pumps. It's just like you. If an alarm goes off in your car that says your tire is low, what do? Go put air in it, right? So we came back and we figured out that there's technology for sensors and for water monitoring, which is what we're doing today with Performance Chemical and monitoring our oil and gas pumps and lines. We're doing the same thing in Africa, monitoring these wells, because it's unacceptable to drill a well and give people false hope. Hey, look, you've got water now. 6 months, the handle's going to fall off, but good luck with that. And so I created an organization called Jordan 7, which is after my favorite story in the Bible, which is a story about Naaman, who dipped himself. God told him through the prophet to dip yourself 7 times in the Jordan River. If you know anything about that story, the story is not about the water. It's not even about the number 7. It's solely about his obedience. Are you going to be obedient to dip yourself 7 times in the Jordan River? So God was asking me, are you going to be obedient to do what I'm asking you to do? And so ministry started up again. And I'm helping our family business fund and reaching out to other organizations and other churches and other businesses to help fund projects in Africa to help people not just drill for water, but to come up with sustainable solutions to keep the water flowing.
So, and to kind of attach to what you're saying, I think we in this country, I don't think everybody, but I think a good handful don't look at big picture all the time. It's, yeah, we're going to bring all of this equipment over. and it's going to provide you with the access that you want, right?
Right.
So that's fantastic. Great. But where's the support system
True.
for later down the line? And so what is the result if you don't have a Lowe's or a Home Depot and your washer goes out? Where do they get one? Like what do they really do? How'd you resolve that problem?
Well, that was a great problem because there is no Home Depot over there. So we would come back to the States and we would get organizations, businesses, and churches to fund our project where we could send over 40-foot containers, on a ship, send it over to Cameroon. They truck it in that was full of washers and bolts and nuts and screws and hammers and everything that's needed. And then once we had all that equipment, and we even have drill rigs that we would break down and put on these 40-foot containers, motorcycles, truck parts, whatever we could to help them. So what we decided to do was, instead of the white man going over and helping and fixing it, is we would train the indigenous people in each village how to take care of their well and give them the resources in which to maintain their well and to use it as a point of income, right? People traveling come through your village, they're needing a cup of water. Well, we'll charge you a penny or two, and then they can take that money that they're accumulating from their well now and buy rice and buy corn and buy seed and reinvest it in their community. There are some communities that we were able to see would raise enough money to pay teachers, better teachers, to come from some of the larger cities in the capital of the Central African Republic, way out into the bush, to teach children. Because here's the thing, if you're drinking from a dirty well, you're going to be sick. You can't go to school. You're probably going to die of waterborne illness. And I'll never forget, this is what drove me crazy about the whole difference between paid church ministry and ministry, because I'll never forget sitting in front of church after church after church, well-meaning people, Chris, who would say, well, how many churches are you planting? How many churches are you going to plant? We would love to give to your project, but how many churches are you going to plant? Okay, church planting's great, but if they're dead from waterborne illness, they're not coming to your church. So why not help us invest in getting people well? One of the books that has revolutionized my life is a book called Thirst by Scott Harrison, who runs Charity Water. And he spent a short amount of time on a mercy ship, seeing people with tumors and facial disfigurements and sickness, where children with tumors sticking out of their tummies and stuff. And he was like asking these doctors on the mercy ships, why is this happening? And he goes, it's because of the water they drink. And so he made it his life's goal to turn that around. So building churches over there, getting the gospel out was great, but if they're not alive, how are they going to know?
Right.
So we would invest with other churches to say, hey, come alongside of us, help us establish this well in the village to give people clean water, and then we can come in and advance the gospel and build churches. And we saw great work in that.
I really like that. Like, it's the way you presented that is very much a 2.0 way kind of looking at what is ministry, right? And it's not about how many churches you plant. It's about how many lives you influence. So what are you doing now that allows you to continuously work on yourself?
COVID had a profound impact on a lot of people. We've interviewed on this show a lot of people who have started businesses because of COVID. They're at home and they've got nothing to do, so let's start a business. Let's start a new project. Let's reinvent ourselves. Let's jump online and let's do some things. It wasn't the case for me. It kind of went the other way. It kind of slowed me down. It made me kind of reassess some things and look at where I was and what was going on in my life, and what do I want to do for the rest of my life? Do I want to stay doing what I'm doing? And so there were a lot of bumps and a lot of hiccups through that COVID years of 20 and 21. even through 22, the water project over in Africa kind of got on the back burner because I couldn't travel over there. Couldn't do a lot of things locally, globally with the church that I was serving at. So it was really kind of a redefining moment for me. It was a moment to really look inside myself and answer some really hard questions. And I knew that in the next couple of years, I was going to be an empty nest parent. And, when you get to the point of having children through adoption and biological, and now they're going to be moving out of the house, that's a hard thing to take. So there was a lot of internal struggle for me. And now what I've seen is I opened myself up to a lot of people who let me down. I opened myself up to a lot of people who I trusted, who I couldn't trust anymore. So one of the things that I'm doing now is I am shrinking the circle of trust and influence in my life. It used to be where I was like, oh man, I'm everybody's friend and I'm everybody's everything. And now I'm kind of coming more inward. I'm more focused on people who want the best and more for me rather than people who want the best or more from me.
Right. It's the idea that it's cool that I have 25 friends, but if 24 of them are negative,
Sure.
what's the point of having them around?
Or not influential at all.
Right. Well,
Right?
I'd also think I'd rather have 2 positive friends, right, that encourage growth versus 24 negative friends that are just there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I'm on that same mentality, right? I have a very tight circle of people that I communicate with, people that I hang with, people that I allow to pour into me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of that broken trust in areas where you believe the trust should be just natural.
Right.
Right. And so I agree with that. I think that's a huge step. I think they always say the older you get, the smaller your circle of friends becomes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a natural thing, but I also think it has to be an active choice on what type of friends you're going to keep.
Oh, absolutely. We've interviewed people, if you remember, on this show for over the last year, which my favorite question to ask people is, what do you want to be known for? Right? And who pours into you? And every single person mentions a wide variety of people, right? I got this person, I got this person, I got this person. But for the most part, everybody that we've interviewed has listed 1 or 2 or 3 people. They've not said, oh, yeah, I've got 137 people that I listen to and that I pour into. Sure, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't read a lot of books. I have a few that I have shaped my life. I don't like to read. I mean, I'd rather do something more productive with my time, like watch Smokey and the Bandit reruns or something, But I have shrunk that down, and it's not really because of age. It's just because of what I've walked through.
Right.
That I think God has now given me an ability to see people differently for what their motive is. Like, I don't want to have anything to do with self-serving people. Right? And that's why I think I said earlier, I want to surround myself with people who want more for me, not what they can get from me, right? And I've had that my entire life, right? I want to surround myself, Chris, with people who will fight for me in rooms that I'm not in. You know what I'm saying? Because I can't be everywhere, but people are everywhere.
No, and that's a huge statement, because I feel the exact same way. If I am someone, if you're somebody that I find a close connection to and somebody that I value in my circle, and something negative is said about you in the room that I'm in that you're not in, I will go to battle for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what you said is a huge statement, because I want the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm going to do it for you, I have the expectation that you would do it for me. Now, you're not obligated to.
Sure.
And if you're not that type of person, that's fine. We're just not meant to be in a circle together.
Right.
And so that's a huge deal. And I have witnessed firsthand, not terribly long ago, of a group of people whose purpose was to grow and strengthen people. And then I've just seen them stomp on people, and no one speaks up and says a word.
Yeah.
Right. And so that is not something that I want in my life. And so I can respect that statement that you said. That is huge. That is, as I've gotten older, like I'm not 67 like you are, but it's.
I can't wait to be 67. Then y'all have to come up with another number.
92. But it is something that I've learned recently that is very valuable to me. So the fact that you said that just kind of makes me realize that it is a strong value to have. So, if you could go back in time and tell or give your 18-year-old self advice, what would you do?
Wow. I think I would say don't use as much hairspray as I did and then put a hat on because that's why I'm bald. I used to spray my hair when I had hair with hairspray to keep it, and then I would put a hat on.
So you're the reason why we didn't have an ozone layer for
Right, exactly. Yeah, I used a lot of Aquanet back in the day. No, I think the advice that I would say is don't be afraid of work that has no end. There's always going to be a problem to solve. There's always going to be somebody who has a need. There's always going to be something. You know, one of the things that I've learned being in ministry, being in the, let's call it, lack of a better word, it's a great churchy word, secular world, working in oil and gas, and even being here, and even being on nonprofits in that whole world, there's something about where are we going, right? I know you and I have said this too in meetings and stuff with team members before, and I've heard you say this when you were back in radio world and being in New York and all the places that you've been. Where are we going? Show me, whoever the leader is, whoever the top dog is, where are we going? I want to help us get to that end. Right? And I think that's wonderful. That's golden, and that's brilliant. It's important. But when it comes to ministry and living in the realm of advancing the gospel, loving on people and sharing with people, the end is Jesus comes back. Right? That's the end. But I think I would tell myself at 18, 20, whatever, don't be afraid of work that has no end, because there's always somebody who needs help. There's always going to be, I'm going to leave after recording today, and there's going to be a problem. There's going to be something in the world, and I feel like I could have a part in that. And tomorrow it's going to be the same thing, and the next day it's going to be the same thing. I think I would also tell myself that when you do put yourself in a position of failing, that look at where that failure came from, and if it's something that you've done, if it's something that I have caused, learn from it, move on from it. Don't go back to it. But if it's because of someone else has done something, maybe their failure or their lack of leadership or their bullying or whatever it is that they have caused, not just to I don't want to go back to that, but I'm going to cut myself away from the version of me who allowed them to do that to me. I think that's what I would share. And it's something that I tell my kids a lot is know who you are and know whose you are and who you serve.
So I want to wrap it up with this one question. And let's create a scenario here. You have access to cut in to every TV in the world. and you've got 2 to 3 minutes.
You could probably do this realistically.
I've done the research on the whole Max Headroom incident, if you remember that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that's
yeah.
a whole
Yeah.
another conversation another day.
He's from the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you had access to every television in the world and you had 2 to 3 minutes to say something important, what would you say?
Stop buying into the Cowboys. They're never going to be a winner.
Jerry Jones planned that a long time ago.
I would also say Creed is not a positive musical artistry.
You're wrong.
I would say that Jesus is the only hope for the world. And I would probably say that my family, my kids, going through what I went through with adoption and infertility, and even having 2 biological, I'd do that all over again. The heartache. But I think I would yell as loud as I could if I had 5 minutes to speak to the world. When you can identify the chairs that don't need to be at your table, and you can remove those, your meals are so much more better.
Well, Jay, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to kind of lead this interview, to do something a little bit different than we normally would do. Over the last few years that I've known you, it's been very influential. There's a lot of things I've learned from you, a lot of things that I've taken on to other projects that I've worked on. And so I just want to thank you for those moments. And I look forward to more of these opportunities with you. And I like to consider myself part of your small circle. So I just want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you for this opportunity to ask you these questions.
Well, I appreciate the sitting on the opposite side of the table and answering those.
Well, I want to thank you guys for tuning in this week. Thank you so much. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you next week.
Elevate your operation with Performance Chemical Company, the pioneers in redefining chemical solutions for the oil and gas industry in the Permian Basin. Unveiling groundbreaking ideas since 2017, our dry chemistry plant stands as a testament to innovation. Our products and services revolutionize water treatment, production, midstream, and saltwater disposals. We're your strategic partners in optimizing investments, slashing operating expenses. Performance Chemical Company. How you get there matters.